Would anybody like to play a rapid game? Otherwise, what I'm going to do, actually, since I'm not getting any invites in the chat, I'm just going to go ahead and press 10+0 rapid. And we're going to go ahead and play some rapid games this way. Let's see how we do. So, game one, I'm going to start with 1 e4 here. And black plays c5. So we've got a Sicilian on the board. And one of the tricky things about the Sicilian, of course, is it's very difficult for many players to wrap their head around all the complexity of d4. But luckily nowadays we know that there are different ways to play. You can play closed positions. You can give this check, bishop b5, although nowadays there's a lot of theory here as well. You can even play some g3 moves. They're not ideal. But, you know, at most club levels, it's more important that you know some reasonable tactical ideas. For example, I will just show one way of approaching this position, which is not far from fantastic. And especially this guy, you know, he's 2200, so he may make me regret this. But oftentimes when I'm playing bullet or blitz, I'm oftentimes just playing like this. I'm putting the bishop on c4 and I'm playing d3, and if he goes d5, that's okay. I'll just drop the bishop back. And I've actually had quite reasonable results with this. I mean, if you put it through an engine, the engine will tell you, you know, you're a fool. Let's put on a little bit of sound. Yeah. Okay. So the engine will tell you that you're a little bit of a fool to play in this way, but results have been, yeah, as I said, results have been absolutely fine. Here I have an option to play e5, knight d7, and then just bishop f4, but it might, I'm a bit worried that it'll make my bishop on a2 seem a little bit silly. So therefore what I'm going to do is maybe even take on d5, takes, and bishop g5. The problem with that is that then he puts his bishop on g4 in some situations, and you know, it's not ideal. So what I'm going to do is maybe put, I was thinking h3, but that's a little bit too much. I'm gonna compromise with bishop g5 without capturing the pawns. One of the ideas of not capturing, as I say, is to play against this bishop being a little bit passive. So black has immediately captured here on e4. I'm not too sure that opens up the d file, but I'm not sure that that's so great for black. Now I'm going to take, and I'm going to play e5, grabbing a little bit of space. And again, I'm following this theme of playing against this bishop on c8. My point is that black cannot get an e5 at any good moment. And also on top of this, my knight on c3, if you notice against this structure, it's not really very effective. But by playing e5, I threaten at some point to bring the knight to e4. Now he's threatening knight takes e5 because of the discovered attack on my queen, so I have to react to that. I'm going to play queen to c1. Under normal circumstances, queen e2 would make a lot of sense, but my idea with queen c1 is I want to put the queen on f4 so that in the future I can play the move knight e4. And the idea there is that if my queen was on e2 and I ever get my knight to e4, then black can actually grab this pawn on e5. But with my queen on f4, I'll be defending twice. So, hello, Sean Ferry. Hopefully, we will either modify the name of the show very soon, or maybe we'll get in our remaining games and then play for the rest of the show in the Daily Shield. So here in this position now, I do have this option of knight e4. Which makes a lot of sense to me. I'm not seeing any reason not to play it. So apologies. So, okay. Apologies for any sound there. Okay, so black has gone knight to b4. And the idea here is very logical. He wants to take on c2 and also harass my bishop. And the thing is, this diagonal here is closed off. Another idea he might have is to put the knight on d5. But anyway, because the diagonal is closed off, I'm actually dropping the bishop back to b1. It looks like a really weird square, and it hurts a bit the harmony of my position because it disconnects my rooks. But my point is that at some point I wanted to play c3. And so in this position, if I'm threatening the move c3, then what happens is, first of all, I have the d3 square covered. And secondly, once c3 is played, my bishop will actually be on the best diagonal. So he's gone knight f8. And now I'm thinking to play c3 anyway. Although h4 could be an idea so that I can meet it with the immediate h5. But it feels like a little bit too much. I mean, to start pushing pawns on the king side when my queen side pieces and just my piece harmony in general is quite poor, it feels like that's a little bit premature, and I could pay a price for it. Now knight d6 is also another option that I had earlier. Now I'm a little bit concerned that if I go knight d6, he might have knight takes e5 here, with the point being that after knight takes he can actually do an intermezzo move here. And if after knight takes e5 I take, he will potentially take this piece in some way or another, but I don't know exactly how. It's definitely interesting to play, but I think I'm just going to improve the placement of my pieces, because basically the reason is I can't quite figure out what happens after certain lines here with queen takes or rook takes, because what would happen is that I would have an attack, excuse me, not this way, I would have an attack with the bishop and with the knight and maybe some queen move, but I couldn't see anything concrete. So in chess, it's important to be somewhat pragmatic in these spots. Now, on the other hand, I feel like I can and should go to d6. The reason for that is because now, if he plays this knight takes e5 ideas, I can go knight takes b7. And in the end, if he goes knight takes, first of all, after queen takes, I will defend this piece. But secondly, also in a lot of variations, this knight is going to be hanging. So the second you take, then this knight will hang. So bishop comes to c6. Very reasonable move, just defending the bishop. He doesn't want me to take it and then dominate with this unopposed light-scored bishop. So this move could have been expected. And another thing, once I have this knight here, is to try and target not only h7, but especially f7, maybe with my other knight. So for example, knight here, if knight takes e5, there is going to be some bishop takes h7 stuff going on. My concern with knight g5 is that this pawn will drop, and it'll drop with not only fracturing my structure, but also, as you can see, attacking the rook. So I'm not so happy about that. h4 is another candidate move, but the problem is it doesn't actually come with the threat of h5 because that square is being covered. So one idea that I'm having is just maybe to just put the rook on d1 and say, well, I'm just going to improve my pieces and see what happens. One of the drawbacks playing like this is that after b5, a takes b5, a takes b5, which would make sense as one of his candidate moves, he does have this a file, and I'm not opposing that. So I might want to think about what to do against b5 already, and that's actually what he's gone ahead and played. One move that I have as an idea is bishop to e4. If bishop takes, rook takes, the point is if pawn takes, I can start taking here. The other option is to just play a5 and say, I'm going to keep the position locked down for now. I don't care so much that this pawn is now a little bit more vulnerable. I do care a little bit, but the point is if you go after it, there's going to be, that's a two-tempo investment. And in the meantime, your king side is going to be very vulnerable. So he's played something that's really surprised me here. He's gone ahead and he's voluntarily given up the bishop. So maybe he has something in store for me. Queen takes. He might have some idea around queen g5. That would make sense. And another idea that he might have is some knight takes e5. I think that this is what's going on, or what's in his mind. But if knight takes e5, I go rook takes e5, rook takes, and queen takes f4. And if he goes queen g5 here, then I was planning to go g3, and I don't think it's the end of the world. But he's gone like this. This really surprises me, this approach. Maybe he was just afraid that that knight would jump in here and would really hurt him. Now I'm thinking, how can I bother him, basically? For example, if I go g3, if he went knight d5, maybe I would have some bishop e4 stuff. But the problem with that is that this pawn on e5 would hang. I have to watch out for my time. That's actually maybe the most important factor of all. Let's go g3 anyway, because the knight is a bit of an annoying piece. And now, if bishop e4, knight takes e5, bishop takes h7, king takes, queen check, that doesn't work out for me. I have some rook takes ideas in the air where my knight is extremely strong, but whether that's actually enough, I don't really see that as enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here. No, that doesn't work. Takes, Tim takes. No, none of that works. Okay, his threat is just knight takes e5, and actually surprisingly difficult threat to deal with. So I'm actually going to part with my bishop just so that he cannot take here. And now I'm really going to have to focus a bit on the clock situation, because otherwise I'm going to be in trouble, in serious trouble very, very soon. This guy is, a very decent player, so I cannot afford. But this seems like way too much. Now I feel like I can just sacrifice here. And the reason why I feel I can sacrifice is he's exposed his king along this diagonal, and I have this typical tactical idea where if the king goes to h8, then knight goes to f7 check, and I will win this rook and with it the game. Aha, this move I actually completely missed, the power of an intermezzo. And that's an annoying miss, because it means I have to now play something like this, and that's a huge miss. The point that I had seen was after rook takes, if pawn takes, queen takes. If he went here, I was just going to go rook e3 and rook f3 and just win the game. Like this, thankfully, even though I've blundered, the position remains probably about level. I don't feel like I should be worse here. And I do feel actually that from a practical perspective, it's probably more difficult to play for him than for me. Why is that? Because this pawn is extremely dangerous. This knight is really a very, very strong piece. There aren't so many open files in his position. And with this weakened king, you never know what could happen. For example, already this move, rook to d1, creates some threat of knight f7. Right, knight f7, queen takes, rook takes, and in the end I win in exchange because he has to go queen g8 back. But the point is I'm actually up a pawn, and not only am I up a pawn, but I have a better structure. So already he now has to deal with this threat. Probably he can go rook d7, or he can think about it, but after rook d7 he has to think about the move e6, when he has to go back to some square like c7 or something like this. Maybe that's quite good for him. He's gone there instead, and now I could start to consider a move like queen c6 in order to just try to collect some pawns. But I'm definitely a bit wary of this. Yeah, I'm definitely a bit wary. Another idea would be e6, to try to land that knight on this very powerful square. But the problem with that is it does give the f6 square back to him, access to that square at some point. I'm not sure that I love that. So I'm going to play a strange looking move, king g2. Will I do that actually, or will I go h4? h4 stops some g5 ideas, but it does weaken my king. Another option that I have is some move like rook d2. It's a bit annoying that he is threatening some b4 ideas here. He's playing very well overall, I would say. It's not clear to me what to do in this position, actually. Let's just go king g2. It's not clear. I'm running out of time. And, well, time will decide the game if nothing else, right? So I have to be very careful there. Yeah, this is not the kind of position that I wanted to get, to be honest. He's now going h6, which is a very provocative move, again, with some ideas like this. But I think I'm going to maybe drop the queen to e4 and just press this point. I guess he can go queen e6, in which case maybe I'll do something. Okay, he's gone like this. Now this was my idea to get him in there, and then maybe just try to improve my pieces. e6 and rook takes h5 ideas are in the air. Not sure exactly how he plans to deal with that. I'm also not sure how strong those ideas are. f5 is another big idea. I think I have a lot of ideas in this position, and so when you have a lot of ideas, it's easy for your opponent to blunder. But on the other hand, I am down in exchange. My king is not very safe. He does have, inevitably, he will open up some files against my king sooner or later, and I also have very little time on the clock. So overall, I would say really anything can happen in this game. He's gone queen c7. I don't like that move because it opens up this possibility of e6. He may have missed these ideas of rook takes h5, and importantly, it takes away the queen from blockading my e-pawn, which is, at the end of the day, a very strong passed pawn. He doesn't have moves like queen c6 here, which would pin me, because, in fact, that would just be a blunder. And if he drops his king to h6, which is the only square he can move his king away to that would solve against this problem, okay, so now he's giving me the option to take king here, queen takes, and then the question is, what happens after queen takes? I would give mate, but after rook check, I would go check here, takes. If king here, queen mate, and if king takes e6, rook e5 is mate, right? Let me double check. Takes, rook takes, check, king here, check, king here, check, king takes, rook is mate, and if king there, mate, and if not, he loses his queen. So, I mean, I may have miscalculated, but as far as I can tell, he cannot take this knight. Basically, if he takes it like this is the simple combination, queen f7. And if he takes it like this, there may be multiple ways to win, but the way that I saw was this check, this check, this check. If he takes the pawn, I will checkmate here with rook e5. And the point was that if he goes king d8 is the only way to save his queen, and then I would have queen f8 mate. If he goes king e8, then I would have rook h8 mate. So actually, in fact, it's checkmate. Excuse me. Yeah, in fact, against these, there is either rook here, or against king d8, queen f8. And against this, it's mate. So in this position, in this position here, this is a big blunder. But at this point, it may be the case that the position was already lost. I don't know, after e6, it feels very difficult. What are you going to do? For example, you could put the king on h6. But as I say, there, in those spots, then this kind of move, knight f7, is going to immediately force at least rook takes f7. Maybe after king h6, I would even do something like queen e5, which would create threats like knight f5, check, and then picking up the queen. Although the concerning thing about this is, let's say he then did something like queen c6 with my queen on e5. It's hard to say exactly how I'm going to progress. Out of my own curiosity, and hopefully yours as well, it does turn out that after e6, the position is +8, as you guys can see in the engine. So there is no way to save the position. If he goes something like king h6, oh, excuse me, sorry, what I was saying in the chat, and suddenly I forgot about it, is of course there's this move, e7 will take care of, I don't know what I'm gonna finish the sentence with. I mean, we'll take care of the win, right? Let's say, or we'll take care of the position. Just because we're now either playing e8 or taking the rook. And in fact, I mean, if he goes something like, I mean, there's really no square. For example, this is quite a pretty checkmate in 2, because you take away that square, and well, let's say that you go here, still it's going to be checkmate, because the white pieces are really hounding the black king. In fact, here, I mean, maybe this or this or this are even stronger. I want to just double check my evaluation, which was that here, yeah, I was saying that even though I blundered, my position is still okay, and the engine agrees. It gives a slight edge in this position, but nothing significant. Maybe it slightly prefers white, and that was my feeling as well. But it's nothing too crazy. In this position, it much preferred white, so clearly I went wrong somehow. Interesting suggestion, queen h5 here, actually, just preventing against this threat of knight takes e5 because of the pressure on h7. And that if I had spotted that move, I think I would have played it, because it is kind of the clear move. If you press the X button, the X key, that'll actually show you what the threat is of your opponent. So in this case, you can see knight takes e5 here was kind of a significant threat. So anyway, that has been one game.